Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Zack and I'm a meteorologist at the Weather Service office in Melbourne, Florida. And for those of you who have been at this meeting over the past couple of years, you guys are probably pretty familiar with John Pendergrass. I am stepping up to fill his shoes as he is recently retired in January. So I serve as the fire contact for the office for East Central Florida, all the 10 counties that the National Weather Service in Melbourne covers. So any questions, concerns, anything that comes up during the fire season or even during the off season. Even during the off season, feel free to reach out, and I have some contact info on the last slide as well. So before we hop into the fire season and where we're going, let's take a look back at where we are right now and where we've been. So right now we are still in hurricane season, and you guys might be aware we do actively still have a hurricane in the Gulf of Mexico, but we will not be seeing impacts to our area from that. So this was forecasted to be a highly active season with the potential for a record-setting number of storms. Here's a look at kind of what we've seen this season and the tracks for the season we've seen so far. So we've had 17 named storms. 11 of those became hurricanes, and 5 of those became major hurricanes, category 3 or above. And you can see that those are all slightly above normal and what we would expect for the Atlantic hurricane season. And here in Central Florida, we felt a lot of impacts to our communities with these. They throw a lot of hazards at us, most notably, obviously, the tropical winds that came on shore with these, but a lot of rainfall, some freshwater flooding, some river flooding, especially across the Orlando metro areas, Tampa, the west coast of Florida, as well as storm surge on the west coast and even a deadly tornado outbreak that occurred on the Treasure Coast counties with Hurricane Milton just a couple weeks back. So the season won't likely be remembered for the number of storms we had, but it's going to be remembered for the impacts which we felt, and it's going to be looked at as the costliest and deadliest season on record, most notably for the damages that occurred with Helene in the Appalachia Mountains. So this is where we've been and this is where we are. Rafael is out there currently as we speak in the Gulf of Mexico. Again, no impacts expected here for East Central Florida, but we've gone through most of the list and hurricane season continues through the end of November. So why am I talking about hurricane season? Why is that important? Talking about the wide scheme of fire weather in the upcoming season. Well, due to the tropical season, we got a lot of rainfall, especially on the west coast of Florida. We also had a pretty wet season or a wet thunderstorm season. So combining these, we're doing pretty good in terms of rainfall departures across most of the area. So what we're looking at here on the left side, that's our rainfall departures for roughly the last 6 months or so. This is estimated plot based on radar, and there's a little bit of interpolation to get some of those ground truth rain gauges on there. So not every pixel on here is going to be 100% accurate, but what I do want to show is it's a very good indication of trends and where we got our heaviest rainfall over the last 6 months and where we are relative to our normals. Now, on the right side of that screen, that is ground truth. That is what we have observed and where we are over the past 6 months or so from May 1st to November 1st for our observation stations. These are at a lot of our airports. So we have a long history and we have a long climate period to where we can calculate these normal values, kind of where we are in terms of our normals. So what we see here is, generally speaking, that we were pretty wet along the I-75 corridor and kind of the I-4 corridor northward, a little bit drier to the south compared to our normals. So we talk about our thunderstorm season we had in general. It was a pretty wet thunderstorm season. But as we might know, due to the spatial nature of rainfall, just because rain fell in someone's backyard doesn't mean it fell in your neighbor's backyard. So we do have some dry spots, but generally speaking, we did have a lot of flooding concerns with several prolonged periods of rainfall for our office along the Treasure Coast communities down there where you see those locally higher totals near Vero Beach, Fort Pierce, and Stewart. And then a lot of flooding and concerns across the Orlando metro earlier this summer due to afternoon thunderstorms that kind of developed over a period of days and kept on giving them more rainfall on top of already saturated soils and even river flooding due to rainfall falling over the basin. But what this is really most reflective of is our tropical season. And so we see that especially closer to that west coast, closer to the areas where the center went over, they are well saturated. But our driest areas tend to be from Southern Brevard, Osceola County southward, where we're actually a little bit below our normal over the last 6 months. So in terms of soil saturation, we're doing pretty good. For those that might not be aware, this is KBDI, Keach Byram Drought Index. This is updated daily, and it gives us an idea of where we are in terms of our soil saturation. So those blues closer to the zeros or 100s means full saturation of the soil. And this is talking about just that duff layer, roughly that 8 inches of soil on the top layer of the ground. And the dry areas would be the red areas. You can see that up there towards the Florida Panhandle, they're a little bit drier, and that's closer to those 700, 800s. So in general, we're looking pretty good to start our fire season in terms of soil moisture. And so soil moisture remains high throughout much of the peninsula, not uncommon for this time of year. But longer periods of dry weather will likely allow soils to gradually dry out through the next couple of months. So in summarizing these two slides, the last slide was 6-month deficits. So that might be more reflective of maybe your long-term fuels, maybe those 100-hour fuels. But here in terms of soil moisture deficits, that little like 8-inch layer of the soil, we're looking pretty good, but we might intend to dry out with the coming season. So soils are wet, but maybe towards Brevard and southward on the east coast of Florida, our larger fuels might be a little bit more dry. So this is a slide that I think we're all kind of looking for now that I kind of set where we are. This is what we're looking ahead. This is what the next couple months of the fire season is going to look like. So these two plots are from the Climate Prediction Center. And what they are essentially showing is that for the dry season, this particular plot is December, January, February, and then we're expecting similar trends further into the dry season into April. We're expecting below normal precipitation and above normal temperatures. So why are we thinking this? Why are we forecasting this? So we are forecasting a weak La Nina conditions to develop this fall and continue into the winter. So what does that mean? Well, generally speaking, we're entering the dry season. So as you may have noticed, outside of maybe some showers this week, generally our rainfall comes in the our wet season rainfall comes in the afternoon, and we get those thunderstorms develop every single afternoon. Well, now we're approaching the dry season. Our days aren't as long. Our surface isn't heating as efficiently because of the sun angle. So you've noticed that we're not getting those afternoon thunderstorms. We're in a transition period. We're transitioning to the dry season. So during the dry season, where does most of our rain come from? That comes from these low pressure systems that move across the continental United States and the Gulf of Mexico, and they bring a cold front across the area. So what La Nina does is La Nina results in the jet stream moving northward. So these low pressure systems that I just mentioned that bring a lot of our rainfall, they're going to be displaced northward. The jet stream is what drives those. So because these systems that bring us our rainfall are going to be a little more northward, we aren't anticipating as many events to bring us rainfall. Not saying that there won't be events, just the frequency will be a lot less when you average it over the season come by April or so. So in general, there's greater potential for below normal rainfall, increasing the potential for drought and wildfires. Above normal temperatures overall, though periods of cooler than normal weather will occur, just with less frequency. We're not going to get these events, but they're definitely going to be a lot less. And so as a result, that means less cloud cover, less rainfall, and warmer temperatures. So now that we discussed what we're looking at, I want to take a couple minutes to discuss products that we have available for our fire partners. A lot of you might be familiar with these, so maybe it might be a refresher, but for those who may not be aware of what our products are, these are what we provide for our fire partners so that they can plan and be safe out in the field. So the first product we have is our fire weather planning forecast. This is issued 2 times a day by meteorologists at our office. The first one comes out very early in the morning, generally before 4 a.m., so that you have the freshest data available whenever you are planning your time in the morning or your burns in the morning. And then we do one at 4 p.m. in the afternoon so that we can plan for the next day as well. So what does this include? It's a zone forecast, so it's a little generalized, generally broken up into counties, but our coastal counties, as you might know, conditions along the coast might be a little different than the conditions on the inland part of the county. So all of our counties on the coast have kind of a coastal zone and an inland zone, and then all our inland counties are generally counted as one zone. So it's kind of a generalized forecast for each county is how we can think of it. It includes important information to you all, including winds, smoke dispersion values, let's see, relative humidities, all that. It also includes a discussion of what you might see for the day. So are we expecting a sea breeze to develop during the summertime? That's important. It can cause shifting winds. During the summertime, we like to include discussion of temperatures. We know that our fire personnel are in very heavy protective clothing and going into an environment that's already warmer than normal. So we want to ensure that they are aware of risk for heat exhaustion and above normal temperatures and heat index. So those are the kind of stuff that is discussed here. So you can just read it, a broad overview of what the day or what the next couple days will look like, but then also kind of that zone forecast of what the conditions are forecasted for the zones. So we issue red flag warnings. You guys may see these come through other notification sources, maybe weather apps, some external parties, but ultimately those come from us and are distributed through other entities. So this is issued when we expect critical fire weather conditions to occur. So for Central Florida, it would either be the Melbourne office or the Tampa office that issues these. Our criteria remains the same across the Central Peninsula. So this is the criteria that we would expect or we are forecasting when we issue these red flag warnings. So we're anticipating relative humidity to fall to 35% or less. We're expecting sustained winds that are forecast at least 15 miles per hour. In addition to those two, we look at a moderate category on the 7-day significant fire potential outlook. So what is that 7-day potential outlook and why do we use it in determining red flag criteria? Well, this is a product not developed by our office, but by the Geographic Area Coordination Center, the GAC. This one that you see here in the bold black line, that's the southern area. I believe their meteorologists work out of Atlanta or at least the Georgia area. And basically they take the region, they develop into these predictive service areas, and they assign a value of what significant fire potential might be for the next 7 days or so, looking at each day individually and discussing trends. So this includes weather conditions, dryness of fuels, and available suppression resources. So why do we use this in red flag warnings? Because we're already forecasting the weather. Well, this is a way for us to incorporate fuels. So we look at this in terms of having a fuel variable as well. So we might have low RHs, we might have high winds, but if fuels are fairly saturated, it might not be red flag conditions. So this gives us a way of something that has fuels incorporated in it so that we can keep fuels in our red flag warnings. So we also have our spot forecast. This is available for you as partners to request from us. You tell us you're going to burn, how many acres, where it's going to be at, and what time. There's a sheet online, and essentially that will send it to our workstations, and we'll either fill it out the next morning ahead of a prescribed burn, or if it's for an active wildfire, we will get that out right away. This is very similar to that fire weather planning forecast that you saw, except again, this is a point forecast specifically for your area so that we can plan for your prescribed burning or give updates on active wildfires and conditions that we expect to maybe enhance or suppress those, as well as for the safety of your personnel. So it includes a discussion on what we're expecting, but also all those variables that I talked about before, at that particular burn location. So relative humidity, smoke dispersion, winds. So you can find this on our website for those who haven't requested them before. And our website's listed at the bottom there, weather.gov/MLB. And then under the fire tab, at the top of the fire tab, you'll be able to see the spot monitor and request those. So for those who are familiar with this and those who have asked and requested and we've sent the spots back to you before, just making you guys aware, it does have a new look. Earlier this summer, the national team rolled out a new spot page, but you can still use those bookmark links that you may have if you have it bookmarked, and it'll get you to the same place. Being a little bit transparent, there were bugs in the system early this summer, but most of those are fixed. So if you do have any issues with that, it may be the system, it might not be you in submitting your requests. So feel free to reach out to the office and we can fill whatever requests you all might have and needs of active prescribed burning or fighting active wildfires. So lastly, we have our fire weather annual operating plan. Essentially, if you don't remember any of the other products that I just talked about or you don't know where to find them, this has all the information plus more on what we do for our fire communities, what products we provide, and what we help you with. And so this is essentially the governing document for fire weather procedures and cooperation among local, state, and federal agencies within the state of Florida. This provides an overview of all fire weather related products and corresponding criteria from each of the 7 National Weather Service offices that cover the state of Florida. And this is updated annually. So you can find this again at weather.gov/MLB. In the fire tab, it's towards the bottom. And this essentially summarizes all those products plus more and anything that we as a National Weather Service office can help our fire community with in terms of forecast products. So as I summarize here, here's the things that we want you to know going into the fire season. So we talked about hurricane season. And an impactful hurricane season resulted in higher than normal soil moisture and vegetative debris in some areas, particularly closer to the Gulf Coast. Not something that I explicitly discussed, but you got to remember with these strong winds, we had a lot of trees down, we had a lot of debris on the ground. So as we get in the dry season, we're expecting these warmer than normal temperatures and less rainfall. So that provides opportunity for more fuels due to more debris from the strong winds with the hurricane we've seen over the season. So it's particularly closer to the Gulf Coast, closer to that landfall area. Secondly, a developing weak La Nina is forecast to result in drier than normal conditions this winter and spring, resulting in greater potential for drought and an active wildfire season. Again, we're starting the season pretty good. Our soils are saturated, but we are anticipating trends to say this dry season is going to be drier than normal. So we are anticipating as the season gets further, maybe into February, March, maybe those soil conditions aren't going to look as good as they're looking right now. And so we're expecting a fairly active wildfire season. Again, this is not saying we won't get periods of rainfall here and there, but when you average it out over the next 6 months, it's going to be less than what we would normally see. And finally, we've discussed our products that the National Weather Service issues routinely and non-routinely for fire weather forecasts and advisories for the protection of life and property for all our partners, all of you guys. And with that, I will open up the floor to any questions anyone might have. Some contact information, you have my email there. I'm not always at the office, so we have 2 meteorologists at least on staff, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. They're always there. They're always available to speak with you. So there's the phone number. If you use extension 4, that'll get you to the meteorologist on the floor. And all our meteorologists are trained in fire weather. So any questions you might have, even if you don't have an active spot forecast going on or anything like that, any questions planning for the future, we'll be glad to take care of you and your needs. And then finally, all these products that are available to you all as our partners are available at weather.gov/MLB. At the top of the page, there's a couple little tabs. You can find forecast and fire, and that'll get everything you guys might need to know. So with that, I'll try my best to answer any questions anyone may have.
So raise your hands and ask questions. If you like. You no.
Shine. I guess I got one. With the spot weather forecast, do they still offer like a high split or any kind of do you request a smoke? Do you do any smoke forecast?
Yes, so we can still do high splits in the spot page. You can request for that. And we send it by email. The spot system doesn't send it typically. I think I don't know what it looks like on, I guess, our partners level because I see it from like kind of back end sending it. But from what I understand, when the spot forecast is sent, you guys get an email. And then about 15-20 minutes later, we'll run that dispersion and we'll send that to that same email. So they might come in two separate emails. And then those for who may not be familiar, high splits essentially when they're run, it's kind of where the smoke plume is going to be going. So that might be useful to request if you're doing a burn in maybe nearby populated areas, especially nearby roadways, that kind of thing. And it gives you an idea of one, where's the wind blowing? Is it going to blow it over that major highway? Is it going to blow it over I-95? And also, how well is it going to disperse just vertically as well? So is it going to settle towards the surface? And it can kind of give you an idea of where your smoke might be going, especially for larger burns.
Great question, John. Any others? Any others? Yes.
So we have at my park, we're going to be doing a lot of dormant season burns this year, and it sounds like the conditions will be good, but then start to get drier. So my mentality is like, okay, we need to start as soon as possible. I'm kind of a novice in fire, but typically I see like burn season usually doesn't start until sometime in December. Is it just that we're waiting for hurricane season to end, or are there other conditions? Like how soon is too soon to start burning this time of year? I guess it's sort of a general question for the group, I guess, more than the meteorologist, but yeah.
That's a great question. My answer to that is always, it depends.
Yeah.
It really is not much of a specific answer, but there's so much into that.
Yeah.
Good question.
I have a question. When you do the summary of what the weather pattern has been for the last year, do you give any consideration to what the timing of those rain events are? In other words, it's great to have, well, we have normal rainfall in total for the 6 months, but that rainfall all came in 4 weeks. You should follow what I'm getting at?
Yes. So that's why. So generally speaking, that 6-month period is you're right. It came within 4 weeks or so. So the Keach Biome Drought Index is representative of, it's updated daily. So that's updated up to date of where we are currently and our soil conditions are. So it might not be reflective of necessarily, oh, the rain fell. Maybe we got 10 inches of rain 2 months ago. It's not going to remember that as well as the more recent events. So that's a good type of way to see more of what your current soil conditions are, reflective of more current events. And then those long-term deficits, again, are more reflective of, even though it might have occurred generally within that 4-month period or a 6-month period, generally kind of the longer term fuel picture as well. So they're kind of two resources showing different things. I hope that answers your question a little bit.
It does. We went in the Orange of our area. We went May, June, July with practically no rain. And then all of a sudden, it opened up and we flooded. And then it stopped. And then the hurricane started. And so you got a lot of rain, but you don't have it in the timing that it does the plant material a lot of good.
Yes, and I know exactly how you feel being in Brevard County, because definitely we saw that dry period, a lot of rain, dry period. So yes.
What products that you produce would you recommend for people to use? So a lot of folks have to monitor kind of remote sites. and decide, are we rolling or not rolling today? So what of your products would help folks look at someplace else to try to get a feel for, well, it's all percentages. What chance did we have that we got rain at that site that's 75 miles away? And how much did we get? I know nothing's perfect.
So,
How would you recommend a person to do that?
so you're talking about
There's
past.
nobody on the ground.
So you're talking about past conditions, or you're talking about future condition, like from what occurred?
Did it rain yesterday at this site that's 75 miles from me and I have to drive to and pull my crew and go there?
Okay.
I don't want to fail when I get there.
Okay, I see. So generally speaking, we do forecasts for the future, but what I can tell you is, so we might not have a direct forecast product that you can view online, but again, our meteorologists are very in tune with what has occurred. So if you have concerns, you can always call our office and we can speak to you directly to fill those concerns. But off the top of my head, we don't have a product discussing necessarily the past conditions. We do have some other websites that are available, water.gov, and you can kind of play around with that. Essentially, what it is it's a map that has, whenever you first open the web page, it shows our river levels, and it's mainly for the very first glimpse and use is for river flooding. But if you kind of play with the toolbar on the side, it's a map that you can kind of edit a little bit. And what that has is it allows you to be able to look at precip accumulations from the periods that you might be interested in. So you can look at the precip accumulations estimated by radar. So it's not going to be absolutely perfect, but it can give you a rough idea over the period of time that you're looking for over the past 2 days or so, depending on what you select for your time range. So it does take a little bit of playing with to get where you need to, but that might be the first reference point that I might direct you to, weather.gov. And then there's a toolbar on the right side, and you can kind of play with it from there and enable precipitation estimates from the past. But otherwise, feel free to call us, and we're pretty in tune with what has occurred, and we can direct you further if you need help.
Can you ask that question?
Oh, yes, of course. So for the spot forecast requests, there is a remark section, and we do look at those. So you can fill that out and put whatever your needs are, and then that information would just be in the top. There's like a paragraph at the top where the discussion is, and we can certainly answer those, and we'll look into those. So that is, yes, another resource. Good question. Yes.
Water.gov and then you said weather.gov.
Oh, sorry. I believe it's water.gov. Weather.gov, sorry, that gives you to our office's webpage. So weather.gov is where you can go for any of your National Weather Service resources. That gives you a big map, and you can click on the area of interest, and it'll give you to a direct link on what Weather Service office what Weather Service office forecast for you. And then water.gov is where you would get more of. Again, whenever you open it, it'll first show river flooding. That's kind of what it's mainly used for, but it does have other uses beyond just that. Obviously, rainfall plays a lot into river flooding as well. So that's why it's kind of a hybrid site for multiple uses beyond just river flooding.
Yeah, the Fawn stations, I mean, if you're lucky enough to live next to a Fawn station, that network's good as well. Heat way down there.
Do you have these dry season forecasts for other regions of the state? Is there something like the dry season forecast for North Florida or South Florida?
So that would be from the other offices. So across the state of Florida, we have 6 offices in the state of Florida, but then the 7th office serves out of Mobile and covers part of the Florida Panhandle. So generally speaking, every office kind of has a domain of counties that they're over, and they would be able to talk about that domain a little bit better. So we focus on East Central Florida, so essentially the east side of the Central Peninsula. Tampa would take the west side, which covers between us and Tampa most of the area that the Central Florida chapter would be over. But in terms of if you need information for Northeast Florida, You can look at Jacksonville's resources, and then kind of the Big Bend Panhandle region. Tallahassee has great resources for you there. And then the far western Panhandle, the Mobile office, and South Florida would be the Miami office. So we're split up across 7 different offices, different geographic areas of the state. So each office might be able to give you a deeper perspective on what they're expecting for their area.
Any other questions?
That's it. Thank you very much, Zach.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.